I'm a Gen Z black man, born in 2004. So my early stages of my life, when I think about racism, I think about my friend Martin, Barack Obama, black and white segregation pictures, and thinking that it all ended like in the 60s and 70s. And then, I realized that that was very far from the truth. We truly live in a tumultuous and crazy time right now. I feel like socially we are very progressive, welcoming, kind of left-leaning if you want to say. But right now we're under the grips of the crazy, conservative, super right administration. With all that being said, I feel angry and confused and kind of helpless sometimes. But a thing I realized is, like I said before, that time during segregation, the black and white photos, MLK, wasn't too long ago. We have a lot of people who are still alive, well, running, pumping, kicking, playing basketball, you feel me, that were alive during segregation. That in your family that you can call, you can talk to. So I said, if I feel confused, if I feel angry, if I feel helpless, I can't even imagine how someone who actually fought, gave their blood, sweat, and tears to a movement for me to vote, for my children to vote, how they would even feel right now. So I decided to go to the source. I went to Denver, contacted my Sunday school teacher, and I asked her to talk to me about her experience, not only with segregation, but give her thoughts about where we're going as a country today. So enjoy.
And let her help me make a decision on what case we get. Then that's him, that big one over on the wall over there was, that was the other one that we had. They wanted us to have a picture near the coffin of him at some point in life.
Yeah.
And beside him. And this is my father and my sister. My mother mentions, in what I'm going to read to you, she mentions their house, and that's it. And that's my mother up there with Regine. But the thing that really, when you mentioned it, was that I was looking in all these books, and I found that in 2020 I had written that I keep this simply because my mother finished 8th grade. That's as high as she went in school. Yet her penmanship, to me, is just so beautiful.
Look at that.
And these are just some examples of some books that she had in her belongings at home back in Memphis. And I just keep this every now and then. I look at it and admire how beautiful her penmanship was. Times on Sunday afternoon after church, we would all have dinner at my aunt and uncle's house. And then this is a picture, as you can see, of a lot of us at one of those gatherings after church on Sunday. It didn't matter where you went to church after Sunday. After church, you usually went by my aunt's house for a while.
So, I was meaning to ask you, do you consider the move from Mississippi to Memphis part of like the Great Migration?
Well, I guess it was. It wasn't as early. It wasn't back in the 30s and the 40s, but it was 1950. And people were still, and they are still leaving, not as much as they did in those days. But I guess you could say that was getting kind of to the end of the Great Migration.
Yes, ma'am.
Because at this time, we were not voting. We were not allowed to vote. It was only after so much of the demonstrating and the killing that was going on in all the southern states. Memphis, there were demonstrations in Memphis. we still could not. I don't know whether you have ever heard of the black and white stores or the Crest stores or the Woolworth stores. These were 5 and 10 cent stores, but each one had some kind of lunch counter. But we could not come into the store and go to the lunch counter and buy food if they didn't have some little place over in the dark corner for blacks to buy food. Then you couldn't buy food, and once you bought it, you couldn't sit down and eat. That's what the lunch counter demonstrations were about in the early 60s. I know you've heard of the Freedom Riders coming through the South and going to restaurants and sitting in to eat, and they were often arrested. Well, those things were for real, and they were happening all over. That's what it was about. But people just kept demonstrating. Some people lost their lives, but although some people lost their lives, it helped those of us who were behind them to benefit. We finally got the chance to vote. By the time I got to be 21, I was able, even in Memphis, to vote. But before that time, we weren't able to vote.
And what year did you turn 21?
I was born in 1938.
1938. So you turned 21 in 1961. Yeah. So that's not 1961 is not too long ago.
I know.
That's not too long ago.
The first time that I got a chance to vote was in the Kennedy-Nixon. That was the first time that I had a chance to vote.
The first time you, an African American woman,
Had a chance to vote in a presidential election.
was Kennedy versus Nixon.
Kennedy versus Nixon, yes.
That is crazy, Miss Minnie. That is insane.
Well, we've come through
Yeah.
a great deal, yeah. The rule was the same across the South, just like the rule for riding a Greyhound bus. If you paid your fare to ride on a Greyhound bus in the South, you still had to sit behind a certain area. There was like a black curtain, and black people had to sit back of that curtain, although you paid the fare to ride the bus.
Price.
The same thing in Memphis, Tennessee, when we rode the city trolley bus. They didn't have a curtain, but they had. You saw the movies about Rosa Parks. That was for real, and she wasn't the first one to do that, but there were some others. But if you got on that bus and you were sitting beyond what they considered as the dividing line, and white people got on the bus, you had to get up and move back or stand, which was not right because we were all human beings. But that's how we were treated at that time. And that's what all of the commotion was about. Why are all these black folk coming to the South, and some white ones too, and marching on certain places? Because they were trying to get a chance for black people to vote, trying to get a chance for black people to go to school. And even in Memphis, the school was better off in Memphis than the small school that I attended when I was in the lower grades in Mississippi. I was in the 7th grade when we moved to Memphis, so from 7th grade through graduating from high school, I attended. The school started with 1st grade and extended all the way through 12th grade. They had different buildings, but it was all one school, Melrose High School. But the books that we received were the ones that they had discarded in the white schools. Those were the history books and the math books and the science books and the geography books and all the different classes that history books, all of that was, as far as black schools were concerned, hand-me-downs. But the black teachers worked as strenuously as they could in order to try to expose us to more than just what was in the book. For example, in most cases, they discarded the books in the white schools approximately once every 4 years because, new information comes
Yeah.
out and new editions come out. So we got the old books that they put in the school. So yes,
Behind. Yeah.
we had books, but we didn't have the new books. We started getting the new books when integration came in 1972 in Memphis, because by that time I was a teacher in the Memphis city schools. We had black schools and we had white schools, but we were still getting the hand-me-down books until integration. When integration came, then they immediately, because white children in some cases were being bused to schools that had been all black. So therefore, everybody got new books at that time. But before then, we only got the books that were discarded by the white schools.
Yeah.
The public library was the same way in Memphis. The public library, black people could go to the public library 1 day per week, and that was on Thursday. That was our day. We also got a chance to go to the zoo on Thursday. That was the day for blacks. However, if a big holiday came on that day, for example, like 4th of July, then that was a holiday where we could not go because they gave it to the whites. The same way with, there was an amusement park, and everybody called it the fairgrounds, where they usually had the carnivals. You had all the rides there and everything. It was the same way for us as blacks. We could go on Thursday, that was our day. But if it turned out that Thursday was a big holiday, then we couldn't go because they went. There are all kinds of things. But to make this short, there were occasions where when I started teaching in Memphis, I also started, because people were rumoring, integration is coming, and they're going to have black teachers in white schools.
Mm-hmm.
And there were also rumors, if you don't get your master's degree by the time that integration comes, you're going to lose your job.
Mm-hmm.
So many of us went to school at night and during the summer in order to try to get a master's degree earned. It just happened that you know it as Memphis University, but at that time it was called Memphis State University. It was very near the neighborhood where I grew up, but we could not attend because Memphis State was certified by the the white Southern Association of Colleges and Secondary Schools. So they had a rule that blacks couldn't go to their schools. So therefore, and this, of course, we've made it up now to
College.
1970.
This is 1970?
This is 1970. We weren't allowed. However, we found out that we could take the exam. There was an exam that you had to take in order to determine whether you could be enrolled in graduate school. Arkansas State University in Jonesboro, Arkansas, was accredited by the Northern Association, and the Northern Association did permit blacks to attend. Therefore, we took the exam, and Sturman and I and many other friends of ours enrolled and drove 2 nights a week and then during the summer in order that we would be able to earn our master's degrees. And we did. By the time that integration came, the schools started integrating in Memphis in 1972. And by that time, most of us had earned enough master's credit that we were selected
Yeah.
to go to work at one of the white schools.
I know that you guys were thinking and like protesting and going through those things because you had like me and like my generation in mind. But when you were experiencing all that, did you think that decades later down the line that these same issues would still be so prevalent in our society today?
No, I did not think that. We are back there now, but I did not think that. I thought that surely things were going to improve, even more than they were. It was just unbelievable. And since you asked that question, I don't know how much time we have.
Oh no, go ahead, Miss Me.
But I thought about something that you have helped do as far as the situation is concerned. And this is one of the CME magazines. And you and all of the young folk at our church and at St. Luke did something back in 2021
Oh wow.
that we thought that was going to help improve things. I don't know whether you remember this experiment that we did.
Oh yeah, I do remember this. About minimum wage. This was 5 years ago. It's only gone up. It's only gone up.
Cost of living has really soared. But I just didn't think that, and that's another thing, you would have thought that the senators and the representatives would have at least responded to you and said, well, here's why we're going to vote the way we're going to vote, or we're not going to vote the way that you'd like to see us vote. But they didn't even do the courtesy of answering our letter. And we addressed each one. We sent a packet like that to each one of them. We didn't just send one. We sent one to each one of those people in this article. And we used all of the etiquette that should be used as far as so they can see that there are some black children who know how to address senators and representatives, how to write them, how to be specific. You guys didn't just say, I think this, I think that. You went to whatever the resource was and got what they were offering at that particular time.
Beautiful.
Now, as far as you asked me, did I think that we would still be trying to get to vote? It's worse now than it was 10 years ago, 20 years ago, because they have gone back, and this has been encouraged by top administration, that every state go back and cut out any chance of anybody electing, in most cases, a black representative or a black senator, because they call it redistricting. And I know I have friends in Memphis who were in a predominantly black district, which meant that if they voted, they were going to elect a black representative or a black senator. But they came in, that is what the Republicans did. They came in and broke up any possibility of them being able to have enough votes to elect someone black. And I know Tracy lives in Texas now, and she lives where there was a black woman who had a position because of the fact that it was a predominantly black district. But they destroyed that completely and put all of these people in separate districts. So the district that she had is no longer a district. And that's what people call democracy. But what bothers me is, don't they have a heart, a conscience? Can't they see that they are putting people in bondage?
They could never see.
They could never. And there are just so many things that I just don't understand that have occurred. And you would think people would care about other people, but people don't care about other people.
No. Not at all. If you could just give the future generation of like black youth and young adult a message, then
What would I say?
what would you say?
Keep praying. First of all, keep praying. Don't let hate get in the way, because you could let hate get in your way and do some things that could make it even worse. Always be positive. Always be working. Regardless of whether you feel defeated, keep going and saying that there is a God. If we trust in God and keep doing the right thing ourselves, somewhere down the line, things will take a turn for the better. Right now, we run into a situation where we are bottoming out. But once we bottom out, more than likely, it's going to be like a flower. That flower, in most cases, dies out. You think it's dead by the time that winter and the snow and everything falls. But then the weather starts warming up, and you see some little leaves popping up.
Mm-hmm.
And the next time you look, those little plants have grown up more and more. And then by April and May, you begin to see blooms. And I'm just praying that that is the kind of thing that we're going to see as far as our young people are concerned. We've also got to show love for each other and for ourselves. And in showing love for each other, showing love for humankind. You know, we're not the lower animals. We all have the same body parts. We have eyes and ears and noses and arms and legs and digestive systems and all of these things. So we need to treat these parts of our own bodies in a good way. And as we treat those parts of our own bodies in a good way, we will also respect the body parts of other human beings. And we won't mistreat them because there are certain things that we do to ourselves that are harmful. And if it's harmful to me, then it's harmful to you. I know that my parents did not witness some of the things that are going on now in the latter part of their lives, but in the early part of their lives, they did. They, like I said, my mother only finished 8th grade. My father only finished 9th grade. But, excuse me,
You're okay.
they were concerned about making things better, doing the very best you can with what you have. They didn't have a lot of money. They didn't, like she mentioned about cars, but they weren't Cadillac cars. They were Chevrolets. Most folk look down their noses at Chevrolet cars, but they were good cars. I remember my father said that he did not need an air-conditioned car. And that was his thoughts, and he was riding around in a car that was very hot. But in 1968, Tracy was born, and that was his first grandchild. Do you know he bought a new Chevrolet that had air conditioning because he wanted his grandbaby to ride
In a car with
in
AC.
an air-conditioned car. But that just goes to show you how people can change and how people can do things for the better. It was more comfortable, not just for her, it was comfortable for him, for my mother, anybody else that rode in the car. But that was what motivated him to buy that new vehicle. But we need to let things motivate us to do better rather than, in fact, that was Sturman's motto. If you know better, do better. And that's what we all, I think, need to do. We don't like what's going on right now, but although we don't like it, we don't need to let hate creep in. We still need to treat people with love and respect.